The federal speech from the throne is coming up on Wednesday, just a couple of days, and everybody is widely expecting that the Trudeau government will implement some kind of a green recovery. We don't know what that is in detail, but to talk about what should be in there, we've got Rachel Samson from the Canadian Institute on Climate Choices to talk to us about clean growth. So welcome to the interview, Rachel.
Hi, happy to be here.
Why don't we start with a very simple question, because you've released a study on it, and that is, what is clean growth?
Yeah, well, we set out to provide a more tangible definition of clean growth than what we had seen to date. We define it a bit differently than some of the other organizations that you may have seen a definition. We define it as inclusive economic growth that reduces greenhouse gas emissions, strengthens resilience to a changing climate, and improves the well-being of Canadians. So it's the intersection points between three objectives: improving economic growth, addressing climate change, and improving the well-being of Canadians.
Now, this is really interesting to me because I've done a lot of work over the last 3 months on power grids, electrical utilities, wind and solar, distributed energy. And one of the things that's become clear is that as the price of wind and solar have dropped, I mean, they're now, 2 cents a kilowatt hour with storage in many jurisdictions, cheap, abundant, clean energy becomes a real competitive advantage and is a job creator.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can see that with things like electrifying other sectors of the economy. So transport, industry, as that becomes more affordable and the electricity system becomes cleaner, the benefits compound, and it creates opportunities for Canada to be competitive internationally.
Now, here's a bit of an odd one, because I wrote a book last year on the oil sands, and the oil sands companies actually think that lowering their carbon emissions will give them a competitive advantage in other markets where there's carbon pricing. And I would think that that actually applies to all kinds of other exports. If you become carbon competitive here, have to pay a carbon tax somewhere else, that may give you a competitive advantage over a product that isn't carbon competitive.
Yeah, when we look at things, ways to drive what we call low carbon growth, so increasing GDP at the same time you're reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it's important to think within firms, between firms, and the creation of new firms. So between firms, things like reducing emissions intensity, absolutely within a sector that can make improve competitiveness if they're less emissions intensive. And then between sectors as well, there could be shifts that are happening in the economy. And then the entrance and growth of new firms that have innovative products and may help to diversify the economy into new areas that are growing internationally.
Yeah, I've got a deep analysis coming on electric vehicles in Canada. One of the things I focus on is the manufacture of commercial electric vehicles, the medium and heavy duty trucks, where there's still lots of opportunity for Canada to get into that market niche. And there's an opportunity that's part of clean growth that we could seize, and it could be huge.
Well, and we're already seeing some of the results of that. With one of the greatest areas of growth of exports, of clean exports from Quebec, is on the transportation side. And a lot of those are electric buses, electric garbage trucks, things like that. And then in Toronto as well, in the Greater Toronto area, we're seeing some growth in that level of exports too.
Now, based on what we've talked about over the last few minutes, do you expect that some of these principles and examples will find their way into the throne speech?
I would think so. I mean, throne speeches are not, they don't usually provide a full list of specific policies. It's not a budget, but it does provide a direction. It provides sort of the policy framework for the coming year or however long the mandate is. And for that, we hope to see this recognition that there is this fundamental connection between our economic growth objectives, our climate change objectives, and our well-being objectives. And that really we can't make progress on one without addressing the others. We actually need to think about them in a more integrated way.
Can you give me a couple of examples of policy that you would like to see in the throne speech?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things we identify in the report, so when we talk about technology development, which is a key source of economic opportunity in Canada, is developing technologies that are going to be in demand globally. one of the key barriers to technology development right now is the weak demand, low technology adoption on the other side. So measures that can both help to sort of push technology in the market, so things that like large demonstration projects, and as well helping to pull that market demand. So that could be regulations, but also procurement. So procuring things like electric buses, for example, as we were talking about.
Yeah, that's a really important point because you can see with wind and solar, the 2 or 3 decades of feed-in tariffs and other kinds of subsidies, but eventually got the technology down to the point where it's the lowest cost electricity generation option.
Yeah, and that's what we see is you can't have either one side of the policy. You need the pushing through research and development, demonstration, as well as the pulling from regulations and pricing and procurement that creates that growth.
One of the things, and this will be the last question, Rachel, but one of the things I've noticed in reporting on energy over the years is that the Americans pour a tremendous amount of money into new energy technologies, and they subsidize it, and they subsidize the science, the research and development, the commercialization. And in Canada, we don't do that to nearly the extent. And do you think we should do more of it?
Well, I think we should do more of it in a smart way. I mean, there's a big difference between throwing lots of money at something and strategically investing in areas where Canada has a comparative advantage or a chance to really be competitive, and investing in ways that leverages private sector dollars as much as possible. So, it's not subsidizing a business or a sector. It's really helping to overcome those barriers and providing that investment that gets over that hump and leads to growth in the future.
Rachel, thank you very much for this. We'll be watching with interest on Wednesday when the throne speech is delivered, and no doubt talking to you in the near future about what actually was in the throne speech.
Thanks a lot, Mark.